what they call the multiplier, the spending multiplier. And what we want to do is take a look at our circular flow. And so if you remember from the last video, we looked at the households, and here's their spending. Just a real brief review of the circular flow. Households take their money, spend it in the goods and services market or the product market. That money goes to the firms, and the firms take the money, and that becomes the income for all the factors of production, the wages, interest, rent, and profit. Now, we also talked about this is one of the ways to measure the total economy. This is the expenditure method, and we just look at the dollar value of this consumer expenditure. There's also the output method, and these are going to be equal because the output method just says what's the dollar value of all the goods and services that are given or sold to the households. Now remember, this is a two-sector model. When we have it just like this, we've got the household as one sector and then the firms. And then we look at the 3 and 4 and 5 sector model. And so what we want to do is there's this concept called a multiplier. Okay, and the idea is that what happens when the government injects money through government spending. Okay, that's one of those. Remember, we had leakages and we had injections. Leakages, L for leakages, J for injections. And so when the government injected money, that was called government spending. And when the firms injected money, that was called investments. Okay, and so what we want to do is look at what happens to the overall size of the economy when we have these two injections. And now, remember, where does this money come from? It comes over here, the households. Remember, they don't spend all of their money in consumer expenditure. They have to give some of it in taxes. And these are the leakages. Okay, some of it to the firm, financial institutions, and that goes into savings. And then down here, we have the world market, and that was imports. We send money overseas for imports. And then this is the exports, money coming in to us. So what we're going to be concerned about with this video is these two. Okay, what happens when there's an increase in those two? All right, so here's how it works. Remember, these are injections into the economy. So here's how it works. We have what we call the spending multiplier. All right, and so the idea is, let's say that I give you $1,000. Now the question is, how much of that 1,000 are you going to go spend? If I give you an extra $1,000, and let's say that you decide to take that money and spend, let's see, how about $700? Okay, now the catch here is that this $700 goes to, so this is you, and you just bought something from a store. All right, we'll make this another person. All right, and so when you spend your money, that $700, that becomes somebody else's income, and so now they're sitting on $700. And so the question is, what are they going to do with their $700? And obviously, let's go back over here. Now they got $700. They might do some of it in consumer expenditure, some in savings, imports, taxes. And so let's say that they take, okay, you spent 70% of it. Let's say that they're going to spend 70% of it as well. So they're going to buy something at another store and spend $490. Okay, so now we got another person, let's say to Best Buy. They go to Best Buy, which is going to be in business for a little bit longer, maybe not a whole lot longer, but they go to Best Buy and they buy something for $490. Okay, and so this becomes somebody at Best Buy's income. And so now when they get the income, they're going to take some of that money, they're going to spend some of it on consumer spending, they're going to save some of it. Okay, and that's the two that we're going to look at right now. We're not going to worry about taxes so much at this point. So they're going to take, and let's say that they spend 70%. So here's 70%, there's 70%. And so 70% of 490 is $343. And so they went and they bought something at Costco. I hear you can't get out of Costco without spending a whole lot of money. And so we're going to clean this up in just a little bit, but what I want you to see is that this initial $1,000, let's say that the government just gave you a check for $1,000, you can see that it got spent once there, it got spent another time here, it got spent another time here, and we could go on and on and on and on, taking 70% of everything. And you can see just from these first two transactions that this $1,000 that got put into the economy is actually creating more. Oops, sorry about that. Is actually creating more spending than the original 1,000. The $1,000 got multiplied, and now it's caused it to have a greater impact. Okay, and so let me erase just a little bit of this. How we calculate this is by using something called, I could have just cleared the page, by using something called the marginal propensity to consume. And that's just MPC. And there's another one that goes along with this, the marginal propensity to save. And that is the MPS. And so we're going to just make the assumption that either when you get money, you're either using it to consume, spending it on goods, or you're saving it. And so if you take all of the money that you are using to consume, spending, and add it to all of the money that you're saving, MPS, that would give us 100% of your money, or 1. So we're talking, we're using decimals here. All right, so if I give you $100, let's say it's $1,000, you get $1,000, and I want you to see how this adds up. So you get $1,000, and you spend $700 of it. Then we're going to say that everybody in the country is like this. And we can say that the marginal propensity to consume, you're going to consume 70% of your money, or that would be just 0.7. And so in this case, the MPC for you, or for the country, would be 0.7, meaning that for every extra dollar you got, you'd spend 70 cents of it, and you would save the rest. And so if the MPC here is 0.7, then we know from this equation here that the MPS must be 0.3. So if I give you the 1,000, you spend 700, and you'll save 300. Now your spending becomes somebody else's income over here. All right, so this is the first person. Then they get the $700, and just like the numbers that we just did, they'll spend 490 of it, which means they'll end up saving $210. When they spend the 490, that becomes another person's income. All right, and that 490, 70% of that is 343, and then they're saving $147. Then that 147 becomes somebody else's income, and when they spend that, I'm sorry, $343, excuse me. That $343 becomes somebody else's income, and to take 70% of that is $240.10, and that means you're saving $102.90. And so we could go on and on and on and on, all the way down, taking 70%, and it would take a long time. But if we just add these up, then this comes out to $1,773.10. And so from this initial $1,000 increase or injection, whether it be from the government or from a business that's investing their money in capital, this original 1,000 just so far has turned into over $1,700. And so this is important because when the government decides to inject money, they need to know the size of the marginal propensity to consume, because they want to know what impact it's going to have. And so the formula to calculate to get the total, okay, instead of having to do it all the way down here, is simply 1 over 1 minus MPC, or that can be written 1 over MPS. All right. And so once you have this equation down, then you can say, okay, if there's a government injection of money or a business investment injection of money, what overall impact is that going to have? All right. And so let's just do a quick example. Let's say that somebody puts, well, let's do this one. Let's calculate the total dollar value. And so we want to figure out the size of the multiplier. So the size of the multiplier equals 1 over 1 minus MPC. And so, let's see, that is 1 over 0.1 minus 0.7, which equals 1 over 0.3. And 1 over 0.3, 3 goes, oh my lord, I'm embarrassed. Let me check this real quick. I should have done an easier one. 1 divided by 0.3. All right, 3.33. I should have known that. So we got 3.33. All right. And so that is our multiplier. And so to calculate the overall impact that this $1,000 is going to have, we would take the amount, let me say the injection of that. So we'll take the injection times the multiplier. That'll give us the total amount. And so the injection was $1,000 times the multiplier, which is 3.33 repeating. And so if we if we put $1,000 into this economy, that's going to actually have an impact of $3,333 total. All right. And so you might ask why this is important. And just in one general sense, let's say that we have a deficit, or that we need to gain $20 billion in the economy. All right, let me come back to that. We need to gain $20 billion in the economy to get us back to where we want to be. All right, and so the question is, how much should, let's try it out, how much should the government increase spending to get us to this 20 billion? All right, and so if we overshoot, what if they put in $20 billion? Let's see what would happen. Let's make the MPC, the multiplier, a little bit easier. So let's say that the MPC in the economy is 0.75. Okay, and so the first thing we want to do is calculate the multiplier. All right, and the multiplier, remember, is 1 over 1 minus the MPC, which is 1 over 1 minus 0.75, which is 1 over 0.25, which is 4. All right, so we know the multiplier is 4, and so they say we need $20 billion. Let's just put in the 20 billion and see what happens. And so the problem is, when you put in this $20 million, this is your injection into the economy, you got to multiply it by the multiplier, and so the overall impact is actually $80 billion. And so if 20 billion was where you wanted to go, you have way overshot, and you're going to end up with some pretty serious inflation because you got way too much money in the economy. Okay, and so it depends. You need to know, the governments need to know what the size of this multiplier is if they want to try and gauge as best they can how much money to put in. And so the question would be, how much should they put in if they want to get the overall impact to $20 billion? Okay, so you know that the multiplier is 4. So the question, the injection times the multiplier needs to equal $20 billion. All right, and so all we do is just make this x, and so we just x equals 20 divided by 4, so x equals 5 billion. And so if the government injects $5 billion, or if there's a $5 billion increase in investment spending, then that'll get us this 5 billion through all of those different spending. My spending becomes somebody else's income, and they spend part of it, and it goes on and on and on. Then going back to this example, this 5 billion turns into 20 billion, and then they've nailed it. Okay, that's what they want to have happen. All right, now what if they undershoot it? What if they thought, let's say, they decide that they're gonna put in $5 billion. All right, because they think that the multiplier is 4 because the MPC is 0.75. What if the MPC equaled 0.5? And think to yourself, what does that mean? All right, if the MPC is 0.5, that means that if I give you $100, how much money would you spend of that $100? And so the answer would be, if the MPC is 0.5, you'd spend 50% of it, meaning you're saving the other 50%. And so what's going to happen if they think that they need to be putting in $5 billion, but somebody got it wrong, and the MPC is actually 0.5. And so what would be the new multiplier if the MPC is 0.5? Remember, the multiplier is 1 over 1 minus MPC, so that's 1 over 1 minus 0.5, which is 1 over 0.5, which is 2. All right, and so if they're spending the 5, let me clean that up just a second. Right. So if they're spending the 5 billion and they're anticipating that the multiplier was 4 to get to the 20, if they get it wrong and the multiplier is 2, then they're going to put the 5 billion in times 2, and so it's only going to have a $10 billion impact, and so they're going to end up coming way short. All right, and so this is what's important. They need to know what's going on with the value of the marginal propensity to consume. And once they know that, then they can kind of try to tailor how much money to inject. Okay, so let's work through one of these problems. Let me change these numbers because we've kind of already done this. Let's see. Let's make this. What impact will an increase in government spending of $5 billion have on the economy if a country's MPC is, let's say, 0.8? Okay, so if you want to pause this and try and work through it, and then come back to it, we'll go over the answer. So go ahead and pause it now and see if you can work it out. So here we go. If the injection is 5 billion, and we need to figure out how much the multiplier is. All right, so remember the multiplier, 1 over 1 minus MPC. So here it's 1 over 1 minus 0.8, which is 1 over 0.2, which equals 5. And so we know that the value of the multiplier is 5. We know that the injection is 5 billion. And so to get the overall economic impact of this $5 billion injection, you would take 5 billion times the multiplier and come up with a grand total of $25 billion. All right, and so that's how the multiplier works. Let me make this one quick point, and this is a little bit off subject, so if you're good with all of this, then just stop there. Before I do that, let me go back and make sure that we see that this is what we're talking about, this government spending and these investments. This is where the spending multiplier takes place. All right, and so when we come over here, ask yourself what could change, what could cause the MPC to change. All right, because it's not always going to be 0.75 or 0.8 or whatever it is. Certainly things can cause it to change. The Great Recession that we had starting in 2008, what do you think happened to the MPC? Let's see, what happened to MPC in 2008 to 2009? And so there's this big recession, the Great Recession happened. What do you think people started to do? Did they consume the same amount, or do you think they consumed less, or do you think they consumed more? And so here the MPC went down, so let's say it was 0.8, and just be dramatic, now it went down to 0.5. Does that have any impact? If you're the government, is that something that you need to know? And what impact would that have? And so hopefully you can look at it and say, if the MPC goes down to 0.8, the multiplier is going to drop significantly. It's actually going to drop. If it's 0.8, the multiplier would be 5. And if it's 0.5, the multiplier is 2. And so if the government, like they did to try to do the big bailout package with the stimulus money, if they think that we're still sitting at 5, the stimulus package that they're going to put together is not going to be enough, because let's say they put in $1 trillion. You know, if they wanted to, well, this is extreme, bad example, but we'll just go with it. If they put in $1 trillion thinking that they wanted to get 5 trillion total, then they're going to be sad, because all they're going to get is the 2 trillion, and that's not going to be enough. And so then they'll end up undershooting what they're doing. We also look at it there's a relationship here with what they call the velocity of money, how fast people spend the money, and there is some correlation between that and the marginal propensity to consume. But anyway, sorry about that. So this is what the multiplier is. We'll just do one quick last review of the whole thing. Here's our circular flow. We've got the leakages, which are taxes, savings, and imports. We've got the injections, which are government spending, investments, and then exports. The multiplier that we're looking at comes from, this is the spending multiplier, comes from either government spending or business investments. And in order to calculate, what we want to do is figure out if there is an injection, say of $100 million by the federal government, how much impact is that going to have on the overall economy. And so we want to figure out, okay, if we're injecting $100 million, how many times is that going to get spent? Because let's just say that it's the 1,000. You get 1,000, you spend some of it, 70% of it. The next person spends 70%, and that's their marginal propensity to consume. How much of $100 or $1,000 would you spend if you got that extra money? And so we're just assuming it's 70%, and so the MPC is 0.7. MPS is marginal propensity to save, and so remember, if you're either consuming or you're saving. So if you're consuming 70%, you must be saving 30%. And so remember, MPC plus MPS equals -1. By the way, can this ever be negative? And the answer is yes. We're going into debt. This might be 1.3, and that would mean that would have to be -0.3, but don't worry about that right now. And so anyway, we have to find the multiplier because we know that money gets spent multiple times in an economy. And to find the multiplier, we have to know the marginal propensity to consume. And so the formula is 1 over 1 minus MPC. And with that, we get the multiplier value. And when we get the multiplier value, which is this, we take the injection, the original injection, times the multiplier, and that gives you the overall economic impact of either an increase in government spending or an increase in business investments. Okay, so that should be it. Hope everybody feels happy about what they just did. He kind of looks mean, but anyway, until next time.